Fresno, California. A city stretched across open ground. Flat, expansive, exposed. Here, the horizon is uninterrupted. Fields extend outward in ordered rows. Irrigation lines cut through dust. Harvest cycles mark the year. Before subdivisions, before distribution centers, before highways divided the valley, this was agricultural land. The valley fed the state. Generations labored here. Some arrived seeking opportunity, some by necessity. Some were displaced and began again in unfamiliar earth. The land was planted, but not everything placed in this soil was meant to grow. Tonight, we examine locations where the ground remembers what the city does not always acknowledge. In a valley defined by cultivation, some things were never meant to surface. They remain beneath the fields. These are 8 haunted locations of Fresno. At the edge of Fresno, a mansion remains from the valley's era of agricultural empires. Kearney Mansion was completed in 1903 for M. Theo Kearney, an agricultural entrepreneur, often called the Raisin King of California. It was built as part of his Fruitvale estate, a carefully planned vision of land ownership and production. Land measured in acres, orchards extending outward, production planned in seasons. In the early 20th century, the Central Valley's wealth was shaped by agriculture. Fruit and raisins, vines and groves, packing houses and rail lines. But the valley's prosperity was never only about land. It was about labor. Workers arrived in waves, some by recruitment, some by displacement, some with no option but to follow harvest work from town to town. Families lived close to the work. Children grew up inside the rhythm of picking seasons. In extreme heat, in long days, in conditions that offered little protection. Inside the mansion, rooms were designed to feel permanent. Thick walls, formal halls, a structure built to suggest that this order would endure. Visitors today describe a quiet unease in certain rooms, most often in the upper hallways after tours have ended. Footsteps in areas that should be empty. Measured, unhurried, crossing the wooden floor as though someone is moving from room to room. Staff have reported doors that refuse to stay latched, handles turning slightly without pressure. A door standing open that was secured minutes before. Some observers claim to have seen a figure resembling M. Theo Kearney himself, standing still, watching, as though overseeing the estate long after its agricultural empire faded. Local legend also speaks of a pale figure, sometimes called the White Witch, seen near the railroad tracks that once carried fruit away from the estate. A shape in light fabric, brief, unexplained, gone when approached. The mansion was constructed to project permanence, to signal that agricultural power had taken root in the valley. Its walls were solid, its grounds expansive, its presence unmistakable. But the order it represented was not shared. The fields produced wealth. The mansion concentrated it, and the distance between them was not accidental. It was built. Beneath the orchards, beneath the estate, beneath the image of stability, was the same foundation. Labor. And not all of it came without cost. Fresno's agricultural identity was built by many hands. Among them, Japanese-American farming families who cultivated the valley for decades. They formed communities, built farms, established routines measured by planting and harvest. Children grew up learning the soil, learning water schedules, learning the discipline of work that repeats year after year. During World War II, that continuity was interrupted. Families were removed. Lives were boxed into lists. Homes were left behind. Land that had been cultivated through generations was lost quickly. Some sold under pressure, some confiscated, some never returned to the people who worked it. The trauma was not loud. It was procedural. A form signed, a date assigned, a departure enforced. What followed was absence. A valley that continued to produce without those who had rooted themselves in it. At the Fresno Fairgrounds, where families were first assembled for removal, a memorial now stands. People come quietly. They read names. They stand still. Some visitors describe a heaviness near the monument, as though the air settles lower when the area is empty. A stillness that deepens after footsteps fade. Several people report the sensation of being watched. Not by threat, by witness. As though someone stands just beyond sight, observing who pauses to read the names. Others describe unexpected emotion. Tears surfacing without clear cause. A quiet pressure that feels patient. Contained. Not dramatic, but present. The monument stands where families were gathered before departure. Continuity here was not meant to end. It was interrupted. Displacement is not only movement, It is removal. It is burial. A community layered beneath time. Fields changed hands. Property records shifted. Production continued. Some roots remain where they were first set, even when the people are gone. In the 1920s, Fresno entered a new era of movement. Chandler Airport was built on land that had once been part of the valley's working fields. Runways replaced rows. Hangars stood where orchards had stretched outward. The flat openness of the Central Valley made it ideal for early aviation. Flight promised connection, mail routes, passenger travel, training flights. But early aircraft were fragile, navigation limited, weather misjudged. Progress moved quickly. Safety did not always keep pace. Training accidents occurred when aviation was still experimental. Engines stalled, wings failed, landings went wrong. Pilots were often young, some local, some newly arrived. When crashes happened, they ended in seconds. The land absorbed what had fallen. Today, Chandler Airport carries its own collection of reports. Visitors and staff describe a figure in the old control tower. An elderly man, seen watching planes land and take off even when the tower is unmanned. He does not move, he does not signal, he simply observes. Inside the terminal building, witnesses have reported figures walking directly through walls as though the structure offers no resistance. Maintenance staff have described toilet paper rolls unspooling on their own, toilet seats slamming down in empty restrooms. Small disturbances, contained, repeated. Late at night, drivers of the airport shuttle have reported seeing a passenger in the back seat in the rearview mirror. Present one moment, gone the next. The airport marked a new chapter for the valley. The sky became part of its future. Runways were laid over soil already worked for generations. Ambition lifted upward. When it failed, it returned to earth. The soil did not move. And what did not land safely did not leave with the next departure. It remained. Watching from the tower, crossing empty corridors, settling quietly beneath the field. A city built on labor also builds systems to enforce its order. The original Fresno County Jail was built in 1880 and demolished in 1957. Even before its demolition, the current jail complex had opened in 1947. In the Central Valley, hardship is often seasonal. Work arrives, work ends. Pay fluctuates, housing shifts. When harvest cycles fail or wages fall short, desperation follows quietly. Jails become part of that landscape. Not distant institutions, but structures woven into the same economic rhythm. Arrests for survival, theft, conflict, public disorder. In the early decades of the 20th century, conditions inside county jails were often severe. Overcrowding, extreme heat, limited medical care. Illness moved easily through confined cells. Some inmates did not leave. Some died in custody. Others were released already weakened. Their deaths followed shortly after, recorded with little detail. Their names entered ledgers and ended there. Structures change, systems endure. Within the current jail, late-night staff and visitors describe a consistent pattern. A presence in corridors after hours. The sound of a door closing softly when no one is nearby. Footsteps that stop the moment someone turns. Some report a voice, low and indistinct, as though conversation continues behind a wall. Not shouting, more like exhausted speech. Routine without audience. Confinement is a form of burial. A life removed from view, reduced to a number, a schedule, a file. In a city where work defines value, those who cannot keep pace are often contained. The jail stands as part of Fresno's working history, not separate from it. And within its walls, some stories did not conclude when sentences ended. They remained, contained, behind brick and steel. Roeding Park is one of Fresno's older public spaces. It was donated by Frederick Roeding in the early 1900s as a civic gift. Trees planted for shade, paths laid out for leisure. 90 acres designed for gatherings and festivals, offering relief from heat and routine. But parks hold more than recreation. They hold the unobserved. They become gathering points for those without private space, for those moving through the city without stability. In the early and mid-20th century, public spaces often carried quiet dangers. Assaults that went unreported, arguments that escalated. Local newspapers occasionally documented altercations and reports of missing persons near the park. Transient populations were rarely documented with care. Public parks became temporary shelter. If someone vanished without property or family nearby, the investigation was often brief. In a city defined by work, those who drifted outside the labor system became easy to overlook. Visitors at dusk sometimes describe a sudden drop in comfort in certain areas, a heaviness near older tree lines, the sensation of being followed along a path even when no one is visible. Some report soft movement in brush when the air is still, as though something passes just beyond the line of sight. Others describe a quiet figure, standing at a distance. Not approaching, not leaving, simply present until they look away. Parks change over time. They are renovated, replanted, repaired. But the ground beneath the paths does not reset. It remembers who slept there, who argued there, who left there altered and did not return the same. In Fresno, where so much is orderly and productive, a place like this becomes a container for what never entered the record. Lives that did not fit into the harvest cycle. Stories that ended without documentation. Beneath the trees and the maintained grass, the ground keeps what the city did not. Belmont Memorial Park was established as Fresno continued to expand outward. As agriculture grew, so did the need for permanent ground. Cemeteries in the Central Valley do not belong to one era. They become accumulation. Families buried across decades. Names repeated, dates clustering in waves. The cemetery reflects the valley's cycles. Growth, loss, return. Life in the early Central Valley was physically demanding. Heat was constant. Harvest seasons were long. Machinery was unforgiving. Accidents ended workdays permanently. Children died from illness that would later become preventable. Influenza outbreaks moved quickly through households. Medical care was limited, transportation slow. Burials increased during epidemic years. Rows expanded rapidly. Grief in the valley was rarely isolated. It repeated. Families returned to the same plots generation after generation. The ground filled steadily. Visitors to the older sections describe a quiet movement between markers at dusk. Not dramatic, not rushed, slow. As if someone unseen is navigating the rows. Some report the sound of quiet weeping carried lightly across still air, as if grief has not fully settled. Others describe cold pockets settling low to the ground even in warm evenings. The accounts are restrained, but consistent. Cemeteries are literal beneath. A place where the valley buries what it cannot keep. In a region defined by cultivation, death becomes another kind of planting. A body returned to soil, a name carved into stone, a lineage interrupted. The fields continue. Harvest follows harvest. But the rows in Belmont do not move. They do not rotate. They remain. Above them, the seasons turn. Below them, nothing does. Water shaped Fresno long before freeways or subdivisions did. In the Central Valley, survival depended on irrigation. It determined which land became productive, which fields survived heat, which orchards endured drought. Before modern infrastructure expanded, water systems were lifelines. The old Fresno water tower was constructed in the late 1800s as part of that engineered survival. Water was stored, measured, distributed. It was never only about convenience. It was about control. As the city grew, access to water shaped opportunity. Neighborhoods closer to reliable supply prospered. Areas farther from distribution endured shortages. In drought years, restrictions tightened. Crops failed, wells ran low. Families rationed what they could not replace. Agricultural success depended on systems that did not always serve everyone equally. When pumps failed or supply faltered, the consequences were immediate. Fields withered, work disappeared, livelihoods contracted. Families left land their names had been tied to for decades. Water determined who advanced and who struggled. Visitors sometimes describe an unusual stillness near the base of the tower. A pressure in the air even when the surrounding streets are active. Others describe the feeling of someone standing nearby on the interior stairwell. Close. Unseen. A single footstep that echoes once and does not repeat. The experiences are quiet, subtle, more atmosphere than event. Infrastructure does not haunt because it is emotional. It haunts because it is foundational. Water runs beneath fields. History runs beneath cities. The tower remains as a reminder that survival here was engineered and enforced. Systems determined who received and who waited. The city replaced orchards with neighborhoods, neighborhoods with commercial districts. The tower endured. And beneath the streets, the lines that once divided supply are still buried. Their impact remains. Every city designates ground for what cannot remain. In Fresno, that removal takes the form of burial. Landfills expanded in the mid-20th century as population increased and production accelerated. Waste was layered, covered with soil, compacted, sealed. Day after day, year after year. The process was engineered, measured, regulated. But disposal has consequences. Workers assigned to landfill operations often labored in extreme heat. Heavy machinery moved constantly. Air quality shifted with wind. Accidents occurred. Equipment overturned. Ground shifted under weight. Long-term exposure to chemicals and debris carried health risks not fully understood in earlier decades. Communities living nearby often bore the burden of proximity. Odor, contamination concerns, limited political leverage. In 1987, the Fresno Sanitary landfill closed. Operations ceased. The ground was capped, monitored, stabilized. But closure is not erasure. A landfill absorbs more than trash. Some employees and nearby residents describe unusual sights after dark. Figures at a distance where no one should be. Movement along graded slopes that disappears when approached. The sound of footsteps on gravel when the area is empty. Not constant. Intermittent. A shape at the edge of floodlights that dissolves when focused on directly. The accounts are restrained, but repeated. A landfill is modern burial. It is what a city does to keep its surface orderly. In a region defined by cultivation, burial is not unfamiliar. Beneath the fields rest generations of families. Beneath neighborhoods lie traces of displacement. Beneath graded slopes sit layers of what was discarded. Fresno continues to produce. The ground continues to receive. And beneath that receiving, layer after layer, the valley keeps what it has been given. Unnamed, unseen, still present. Fresno was not built upward. It was built outward. Fields were cleared, irrigated, divided, worked again and again. Each season required renewal. But renewal does not remove what was already placed. Families were buried. Laborers were buried. Communities were displaced. Institutions closed. The ground remained. The valley continued to produce. Yet beneath its ordered lines and symmetry of cultivation lie names that did not travel with the harvest. The fields were replanted. What rests beneath them was not. In Fresno, the land does not forget. It holds. Have you experienced anything paranormal in Fresno? Let us know in the comments. Like and subscribe for more haunted content. And until next time, have a good night.